Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Lachlan Goldie and I'm a final year construction management student on the Gold Coast. And in today's video, we're going into part 2 of this gym redesign series. So last episode, we created a bit of a design using a few cool softwares and skills and even some AI. And in this video, I'm going to talk through how we got to take that design and figure out how much I think it'll cost and sort of a plan for action on how I would build it. It's a bit of a simulation project and I'll just show you guys a bit of my process. All right, so in this gym redesign, we're gonna have a look at the money side of things and the time side of things. So let's dive straight into it. In the last episode, as you can see this design reminder here, we're talking about what this gym looked like originally. It was really boring, you know, like there was not that much equipment. I found I was maximizing what I had in a workout, you know, dumbbells up to 15 kilograms isn't enough. So I did a little research, found some inspiration, which was nice. Pinterest goes a long way. Set a bit of a tone or a theme for what I was thinking. We got into some 3D software, made a bit of a plan and made a few renders just to sort of communicate the design intention, modeling a few of these equipment too. So a nice half rack, actually using this company called Techno Gym. They allow you to do this for free online. It's pretty cool. So we ended up in this final render and I've done a little bit of work since the last video just to add in a few more details. Things like adding the Aussie flag we said we would, a little quote from Go One More by Nick Bear, and ChatGPT gave us a good start point for the lighting from the ceiling. And I've just gone into Photoshop and fixed this up, so it works a lot better and it's a full completed render. Still gets across the idea about what we were aiming for in terms of scope. So this inspiration has turned out very similar to our final render, which I quite like the look of. I fixed up the flooring. The render originally came out with that as timber. I didn't need any of that. It's definitely got the inspiration from the prompt images. So did it look like I just slapped some Pinterest on it? Maybe a little, but it's also about bringing together design inspiration and the canvas that I had, which was the old gym, and seeing how I could manipulate the space just to get the right equipment in there. I think one of the unique features, which some people might say, oh, that's a bit cringy or tacky, is this ceiling fixture for the lighting. I actually quite like it. I would love to see it in person and see how it reflects. We took all of these ideas that came out of this brainstorm and fed them straight in. A few ideas that didn't make the cut, things like ceiling speakers. I just went through this phase of considering, is it worth it? And what sort of structural things, you know, might be required for taking ceiling sheeting down and then refitting it, and without letting the scope of the project grow beyond what is really necessary to get the best effect for the end user. So how much will this cost? So that's an interesting question and everyone wants to know how much it'll cost and when it'll be finished. So we did this thing called a bill of quantities. Basically, I've gone through the drawings that I had, and mind you, they're very limited drawings. So the first part of this bill of quantities is everything kind of got broken down into what I thought was a logical package of sort of works. So with that, I can then use a unit of measure, say meters squared, and times it by the quantity. So for my gym flooring, it ended up being 13 meters squared of flooring. And part of this bill of quantities also is starting to specify what sort of equipment, what sort of materials you're starting to specify you want in this project, the level of quality, because it starts to affect the price, and that's when things start to get iterative in terms of design. Design is not just once off. It's very much related to time, cost, and quality. And high quality stuff generally costs a lot. So this rate section here allows us to then calculate a total amount. These rates come from a rate book out of the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors guide through Rawlinson's. That is a reference for price guides. So that $87 is per square meter. And in total, the flooring would cost about $1,100 for this quality tile that was specified, a 6mm thick gym tile. The rate actually excludes installation, so I've designated this activity as self-installed or self-performed works. Basically, this is what the gym tile will look like. 6mm, it's going to cover all the floor area, pretty cool. Next up, windows, similar. We've gone for that example window here just to show you that we can do a bit of a 50% sliding feature. So in the whole design, I wanted a bit more airflow. So we totally got way more airflow with this result. And then in terms of gym mirrors, same again, comment on quality. A mirror in front of the half rack would be an extra mirror. So there's only one in front of the dumbbells at the moment. But using the gym mirror or an LED backed mirror would result in quite a costly item on the list. And when you start to think budget, okay, you got to be reasonable. This is just a bit of an illustration about quality and price. You know, they kind of go up the higher quality you're seeking, or the more features generally. Mirrors, windows can be a bit expensive with the aluminium sliding features and square meterage. Again, just using measurements off of our first video, taking those in and just calculating out how much we think it would cost. Painting, that's a bit like find your perimeter and your wall area from how tall the space is, and then I've minused some window areas and the door area just to get a rough estimate. So 42 meters squared is roughly all of our exposed wall area. And you can see I've written 39. That is because I minused 3 meters squared that I was going to also deduct the existing mirror that is already on the wall. So we can tell that painting will cost us a few $100s, and the wall mural, I've just put a little price in there for go one more, $30. I'll do that work. Electrical, I found actually a few products online, 5 customized hexagon LEDs, $400 apparently. Quite a good deal in my opinion. How it's wired in, what sort of other services. Basically, we've put a price in because $400 plus installation costs, I mean, $510. This is kind of combining materials and labor costs, so it's not the most accurate sort of construction process. It's more of like a indicative to give me a rough estimate, and that's all this sort of simulation project is about. Conduit trunking for TV and the fan GPO. Instead of trying to put everything behind the plasterboard and cutting holes and feeding things through, I just thought this conduit that just gets placed on the wall, just quick and easy, I guess. The gym equipment is really interesting. So I thought a budget for this project would be more costly based on other renovation works rather than just gym equipment. Little did I know how expensive gym equipment is these days. If you wanted the Techno Gym half rack, you're paying around $20,000. And I don't think personally, I have the budget for any of that. And even to joke about it in a simulation project as a good option is quite funny. When you can look around online on the internet for a little bit, and you might find something a little less quality, but more reasonable price in my opinion. So this took me 10 minutes to find a couple of good examples of what cheap, affordable options might be around. But then again, if someone were to do this themselves, they would have a budget in mind for what's actually affordable. In terms of gym equipment, we ended up calculating out sort of what we need: commercial half rack, bumper plates, up to between 5-20 kilos and a few each. You can see the numbers here for how many we need roughly. Sort of calculating out kettlebells and barbell, those other slides will show, but $20,000 versus $2,800, call it a massive saving. One sales point if you ever need to convince the client that you've saved some money. Some gym equipment, also important, have all these plates calculated out, and the barbell. You could probably find things even cheaper on the internet and just source them from suppliers or even wholesalers that potentially sell to on bulk. You could say you get a better discount. Same goes for dumbbells. Didn't realize dumbbells in a whole set would cost so much. Went for a little gym bench, which is good, adjustable. These things all sort of fit into the design that we've come up with here. This little accessories thing is quite cute. The shelving, nice. The flag, little priced options that are thrown in there just to remind you that things do cost money, whether you think, oh, a TV, $400, but roughly $350. And say with a pot plant, you just start adding up all these little things that inform the whole project and get a more accurate idea of what it will cost. So in total, you could kind of expect a $10,000 expense. We're not pricing profit margins or contingencies or preliminary costs at any point. All of these assumptions just kind of come with design changes that we've made, keep the existing treadmill, for example, in the gym, and get rid of a few other pieces of equipment, but just a nice overview of everything that we could kind of like move forward on with a good idea. How long is this going to take? So good question. When will this be ready? When will this be done? The process that I went through for calculating out how long this renovation simulation project will take is to just reference what needs to be done and to start to break that down. So this thing here is called a work breakdown structure. And I did a quick draft version on my iPad, just sketching it out. And this is how you sort of break it down. I'll show in more detail in a second. But you've got your project here, then you've got some higher level activities and some lower level activities. And they all sort of sit within a package. So for example, we call these our project level, our major tasks, our subtasks, and our work packages. Individual activities aren't really specified on large projects, you might say. It just can sometimes get chaotic with too much detail, and the level of detail becomes difficult to understand if you don't understand the work package and then the subtasks. So a good example is just a construction project. You might have site preparation, all of your structural steel, all the way through to your finishes. And it's like the process here is broken down to make it easy to understand and price, and then later figure out how to allocate time for each of those activities. So some subtasks here, if you're doing site preparation, mobilization, excavation, piling, all the groundwork sort of stuff. And later on, you've done your joinery, your plastering, your decorating. You're breaking the work down in your mind based on everything that needs to be included for your project specifically. And it's not just construction. Think of a bicycle, think of an aircraft. These things, when you engineer them or when you build them or any form of project, can be broken down using a structure just like this. So our gym redesign looks a bit like this. Our project, gym redesign, major tasks. I broke them into similar activities to our pricing guide. So when we started to cost it, I thought of all the materials and just sort of collapsed them into similar activities. And soon you'll see these subtasks look very similar to individual activities, but I would justify that because the whole event or the sort of project that we're working on doesn't have too much complexity that you can go into detail and just be comfortable understanding every level of this work activity area. So site preparation, services, finishes, equipment, accessories, and handover. They roughly followed this sort of direction in terms of installation. And work packages, I guess these are part of your work packages now, just sort of blurring the lines between our structures. So programming. I've taken all of these work activities, you would say, and put them into basically a Gantt chart or a timeline that we can then apply start dates and end dates to. So for example, our site preparation starts us off. You've got to clear out the existing gym, clean up the facilities, and let's say we started on a Tuesday and continued. This project, from the timeline point of view, has a lot of work that must be linear or finish to start. You need one activity to finish before another can start. Think you've got to take the signage off of the wall in the gym before you want to then apply the next paint so that it's got a clean coat and you're not painting over anything that shouldn't be there. So this linking of activities all the way through the project has just been allocated. So ordering these, structuring them in the right manner that makes sense or logical sense is really important to then figure out, okay, what's our expected handover date or our finished date. In terms of times or durations, so in this column here, it looks very similar to Excel, but we've got all of our individual activities and then we've got an allocated amount of time. So this is a ballpark number, I'm guessing here. You could calculate this off of productivity rates based on former construction activities or someone else's guidebook, but this is generally a mental estimate of how long I think it would take to remove the existing equipment based on maybe my own personal experience. A lot of these activities seem reasonable in terms of time to me. It's not that big of a building, and this has a lot of assumptions about what we're doing with that equipment. Just a good draft. And all of these activities you can see have got start and finish dates. For example, from that WBS, you would normally do a network diagram which shows you all of the dependencies on every activity. And that's essentially what this Gantt chart here shows us too. But as you can see, site prep, services, finishes, equipment, accessories, handover. These are all phases that we understand from our work breakdown structure. And in the next slide here, I have these durations set the way I mentally thought I could do the project and if I needed extra help. So some of the sort of work activities here are self-programmed or self-performed works, and some are specialist works, like I need an electrician to do this work. I would tell him, be here at this time, the job is this, it should take you this long to do. And sort of assuming his productivity rates, and a lot of assumptions here, he would be able to do a particular task like apply the conduit onto the wall and reroute some electrical wiring for that ceiling fan. Ceiling is in the corner. So let's say it takes him 3-4 hours to do that. And imagine that this whole project has some productive workers. They're not slacking around, and it's quite a tight schedule. So back-to-back days of right trade, right labor amounts. And as you can see in the corner here, adequate labor resourced is definitely an assumption. And none of that's been priced as well. So it's just a good estimate of, okay, if myself, a friend, and a specialist got at this project, how long would it take us? So our first sort of activities, you can see, remove the existing equipment, make it all clean. Then we're going to install the pre-made windows already, just as soon as we strip the old ones. We're just going to do that because I don't want any inclement weather to impact anything internally, and just lets us get on with the job without having to think about, all right, painting's coming up, are we putting windows in now, before we paint, or after we paint? So just getting them in before, and then we can tape them up so they don't get painted on later is just a better idea for me. Electrical or services sort of go straight in. Then we've got paint, and then we've got our flooring. So I just thought, okay, get all the spray dirty stuff done, and then we'll put it in our neat gym tiles. Some other activities can run simultaneously to those activities. So install the mirror, install the wall-mounted fan, install the lights. They should be plug and play by this point. And then the most time-extensive project is 2 days full of install gym equipment. And install is not just place, it's build. And like Lego, sometimes you think, oh, I'll get it done in 2 hours. It might take you a bit longer. And self-performed works, technically I would build this with a friend and enjoy the process. It would take some time, but think of a half rack that might take you half a day. Think about how you want to spend your hours in that day just to get everything in there and delivered, so-called. You could also, during this time, start some final activities like hanging a Aussie flag in the corner, building out some of the shelving, and installing the TV. The next process is handover. Test all the equipment, make sure it works, and the theoretical client here would have good inspection to make sure it's up to scratch and standards. So in terms of this red thing down the bottom that you saw initially, this is our program laid in with our cash flow. So if I go back here, you can also see there's a column for cost. So it's not the exact same number, I don't believe, as our previous bill of quantities, but what I've been able to do is, since these activities roughly all have an estimated cost, let's say materially, I know that install pre-made windows have a cost. So as we can allocate costs material-wise, I'm just estimating this number onto these specific activities. And then once we've got that Gantt chart over here, I can then track the total costs of this project over time. So in summary, the project doesn't spend too much money, but the most expensive part is where you could see the angle the steepest. So that's when this rise over run of this cash flow sort of proves that you're spending the most amount of money here, which makes sense in our pricing for the gym equipment. So you can see that activity there is represented by this amount on the graph here. So total cost over time shows that most of our money out in terms of expenses and costs for the project are in this phase here. Early works, they don't cost too much. They're a bit flatter. And then same with handover phase. It's very much a flat line because we're not spending too much money installing, building, that sort of thing. So in summary, how much does it cost and how long does it take? So it takes about $10,000 roughly, with a few assumptions and excluded works not specified, and time. It takes about 6.5 working days. So I'm excluding Saturday, Sundays as a weekend here. And then in terms of calendar days, 8.5. Ambitious? Maybe, you tell me. So as a simulation project, just to summarize it up, the start here, from what it was to the vision that we have for it, and this is, of course, the plan. So what's next? I loved going through this process with you guys and so happy to share it with you. I want to hear your feedback about what you think about the project, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you think I missed or should include in maybe the next project. And certainly I want to mention that we're going to keep doing these simulation projects. My next one that I have planned in the works is renovate my own ensuite. So as you can see by the photo, bit dark, bit miserable, bit old, could do better. Let's think about how we can improve, redesign, renovate, this sort of thing, simulation project. And maybe after that, I'll think about some bigger projects. Think design dream beachfront house, think design a sports hall for a school. And there's a project in the works that I've got talking to a friend where, hey, it won't just be me talking to the camera, let's collaborate a little bit. And I've already started this project at uni once on building signage. So there's a place called Transformer at my uni, and they are like an entrepreneurial hub, and they just don't have the right signage out front to attract new people, guests, visitors. And I want to make it a little simulation project that we actually get to see the end result of. Might need some permission first, but always happy to take you guys along and just go through the process. So if you guys like the video, like, subscribe, share, and check out my socials on the bottom of the page. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.